Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bella, Brillantes Emprendedoras Latinas de Los Angeles. I'm so excited to have here with us today for our interview Rosa Valdes from Educated Chola. Welcome. Bravo. It's so good to have you. I love doing these interviews. I feel like we learn so much from you all in the space that you're in, and not just about how to run your business, but also about really honoring our life's journey and the stories we have to share, and they're worth sharing. And so I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you and your journey and your business and your life and all those things. So we're just going to get started, and I'm going to hand the mic off to you and just tell us a little bit about you. Who is Rosa and what is Educated Chola?
Yeah, so me, Rosa, is someone that struggles with daily anxiety, chronic anxiety, and that's literally what inspired Educated Chola, which is a lifestyle brand designed to help individuals, embrace their mental health concerns and struggles, and not just any individuals, but it's particularly focused with the Latinx community since, as you know, our culture doesn't like to talk about mental health, doesn't like to talk about a lot of things. So with that idea, and that's not to say that, growing up, my family wasn't talking about my mental health issues. I think it was more of like, we didn't know what we could do to help me, or we didn't know like what was anxiety. Like, I feel like the main mental health issue that anyone does know is probably like depression, which I definitely did have my bouts about during high school, but it stemmed from my anxiety. But that's just kind of like looking back at it, something that, we just don't know about it. So the goal of Educated Chola is to create awareness within our communities, particularly in our households, by bringing in like mugs, t-shirts, tote bags, earrings, in a subtle way. So like the mugs, for example, will say amygdala cállate, and like no one really knows what the amygdala is. Like I have to explain it unless they're like a psychology major. But even so, I've had people tell me like, oh no, like now my family always tells me, oh, get your mug. And also it has started that conversation for them about mental health and like what the amygdala is doing, which is basically controlling your anxiety. So not just your anxiety, but other emotions as well. But that's the most common thing in terms of like being in fight or flight mode. That's what it is. You're either in like one of those two when your anxiety is just kind of spiraling. So yeah, create awareness within our homes. That way we can just change the narrative for not just ourselves to be more comfortable to get help, and talk about it in our now households as adults, but be able to change that for our future generations.
I love that. I love how it's very mission based, it's very purposeful and meaningful. And I found that with everyone I've had the honor and opportunity to talk to and to interview, there's always this kind of bigger kind of goal and this larger movement around something that has inspired women to start their business and to continue their business. And it's just so inspiring. I think it's common among Latina, Latinx entrepreneurs, that we find a deeper sense of purpose in our business. And so tell me a little bit, I'm curious about, we'll learn a little bit more about the business as well, but share a little bit about how you grew up, when you were a young child, and just, how did that kind of shape again, what you envisioned to do, what you are doing, and even just you as a human being, right? I always kind of am curious around like, does entrepreneurship, does like kind of business ownership run in your family? Is it something that you kind of always thought about growing up, or just share a little bit more with us about what it was like to be a little Rosa running around as a child?
Well, little Rosa was in, I believe, East LA first. So that's where we were at when we started. I have two sisters, and then it was my mom and my dad. My dad passed away when I was around 5 years old. So it's always been really like my mom, had a household, took over everything. She got stuck here without papers, unfortunately, when he got passed away. So a lot of the, inspiration and journey is because of that. And I told Rocio right before we started this, like, probably gonna cry. I'll make myself cry all the time, but this is the story, so we're okay with crying here.
Yes.
But in terms of entrepreneurship, like, I don't think I ever thought about it before, maybe like high school or anything like that. Like, I was just like, oh, cool. Like, I want to have a coffee shop. Like, I wanted to do everything. I even had thought like, oh, I'm gonna be a neurosurgeon. This was when I was like 10 or something.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it and I was like, no, that's a lot of years studying. Like, I don't want to waste my life like that. And like, I know it's not like a waste to be a doctor, but I was like, I don't want to like not, live and go out and do things. That's not to say that I didn't, go to school and like spent the majority of my life in school up until I was 24, 25. So that would include grad school. And I've always told people, like, I never really wanted to go to school. It was more of a need. Like,
yeah,
they tell you, you have to do this, you have to do that to be successful, from communities of color. So that's also not to say that I don't like, appreciate like my degrees and everything like that. Like, I'm so grateful that I was able to go to like NYU, like one who says no to NYU, but also like, oh my God, I got to live across the country, something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do. But back to Little Rosa, in terms of entrepreneurship, and I only thought about this like up until recently in like what I do when it comes to going to like pop-ups. So that's like the bougie version of like going to a swap meet. And I grew up in the swap meet. My dad used to sell watches and gold. And then my mom used to sell like, like little girly things like backpacks and like hair ties, etc. So we definitely did do that. And then once he passed away, my mom was like, nah, we're not doing this. So she did other things. But that's why I always think about when I'm doing pop-ups, I'm like, oh my God, this is like the bougie version of that. But
where are the churros, right?
Yeah, I always want churros. Or like a taco man around, that truck. My mom used to make us burritos when we were growing up, and like every Sunday it was us and our cousins. It was a whole family thing. I know some of my family still does that, but we were like, just little kids, like just feed us, and then we run around and do I don't know what there at the swap meet. So that was like something that I'll think about every so often when I'm like designing jewelry, like, oh, how did they do that then? And then now it's me finding all about how do I manufacture things. It might not be the same as it was because now there's things like Alibaba and AliExpress. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it, in like downtown LA, but I think that's a whole nother, like, once we go up a next step, then we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But definitely doing it my way for now. And, along the way, just asking a lot of questions. Like I've reached out to like bigger brands or big companies by other Latinas. And, like sometimes I don't get a response and I'm like, that's totally fine. I personally like to say that my door is always open. Like I will tell anyone, like, this is where I get my shit done. Like I don't find it as like it being a competition. One, because we're not going to get anywhere if we're just competing with each other. And two, I don't know any other Latina brand or Latinx brand that's like combining mental health and lifestyle in creating products or just whatever it is that I'm putting out there, whether it's a blog or newsletter. So in just having that realization for myself, I think is important because I think a lot of the time people are like, oh, I'm not going to share it because you're going to steal my idea. I'm like, you can try and steal my idea, but like, that's on you and you're going to get the bad karma. And I'm a trademarking. So
Yeah.
I'm covering all my bases so that hopefully that doesn't happen. But just being, you know, aware that like everyone's doing like a different version of whatever your business is.
Yeah.
And I think that still allows me to share with other businesses, other Latinas. I work closely with a few other businesses that I'm always like, hey, what do you think of this? Or vice versa, you know, like helping each other, just bouncing off ideas is the major thing that I do with the other Latina business that I constantly talk to like daily. So I think I veered from whatever the question was. But.
No, it's all good. It's a conversation that we're having, and I love all that you're sharing. And we're going to come back to that point that you were just making, but I do just want to kind of pause and honor the tears, I'll say, because, you know, it's something that, you know, we all share a lot of struggles, and as kind of coming from similar cultures and backgrounds, and but at the end of the day, we all kind of go through the journey on our own, right? Like, and so what you experience obviously is very near and dear to your heart, shaped who you are, continues to shape who you are. And so I think that taking that time to honor that and being okay with crying. I think you actually have, I've seen like some of your material that it has to do with also like being a chiona or crying, or, you know, and I think that normalizing that is important. And you made a comment around kind of we're pressured into these norms, right? Society tells us, and honestly, we have to work extra hard as women of color. You know, we're seen in a certain light or whatnot, and some of that comes from our parents. Like, just I really believe some of that is just the work ethic that we're born into, right? Our parents, bien trabajadores, bien luchones, and so regardless, we kind of inherit that. And at the same time, we have society pushing us a certain way to prove ourselves. Right. And I think that honoring your education is not definitely something that should be celebrated. And yet at the same time, I understand how you feel about like also the pressure to then be educated. Right. And so it's this very interesting kind of, you know, cross multiple different roles and paths that we encounter throughout our life. But I appreciate your honesty and how you come across very authentically, because we need to hear that. Everyone that's listening out there right now, you know, I'm sure appreciate your vulnerability, and we need more of that out in the open like that. So I appreciate everything that you're saying and everything that you're sharing and everything that you stand for. So
I'll just add to that and say, like, my mom never pressured me to do anything. Like, she was just like, you guys, like, including my sisters, like, we all have our master's degree. She's like, I never told you guys to do that.
Don't blame me.
Like, it was just us. So I was just like, I will say it's probably my high functioning anxiety. So everyone's like, oh, you look so fine, and blah, 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 blah. That definitely, like, it doesn't allow me to stop. So like, I'll share something else, you know, that might be similar, but I got fired from one job one time, and I was set to go on vacation literally the next day. So there you go, got fired. I come home, I'm crying. And at the same time, I'm like filling out like 2 applications before I go on my trip to Hawaii, because I was like, no, I'm not gonna like go and like not do anything right now. Cause it was like, for me, it was a solution I had to do at that moment to make me feel a little bit better. Like, okay, like, well, I tried a little bit before I went on vacation. But like, I've done that many times where like, okay, let's me have my breakdown, like my mental breakdown, as people call it. And I know, you know, you shouldn't call it like a mental breakdown, but like, we all do that by ourselves multiple times. Like, I met other friends in grad school and even in high school who later told me like, oh yeah, like I break down at least like once a quarter. And I'm just like, I mean, in a way it is normal now, but also like, when anyone would tell me that, like, it made me think about how like unhealthy that is because we have all these pressures on us. So it's something that you have to do. But like, I always tell my other friend, I'm like we'll get rejected from grants all the time. And like, so far we haven't gotten any, but now I have all the boilerplate. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just submit the applications and we'll see. But I told her, I'm like, you know what, like, it's okay to be down right now, like be as pessimistic as you want, but like go ahead and have your tantrum, because if you're not going to have your tantrum, then you're not going to move on, and then you're going to not do what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. And I think that, sometimes scheduling the cries are worth,
stop.
and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we just need to like let it out when it comes. That everybody's different. And so, that once a quarter kind of concept may work for, someone, but I don't think that would work for me.
No. Kind of like a few times a quarter. I was like, okay, okay, we'll come back. And then I'll start doing my homework and we're okay. But, it's that like need to just continue to function pretty much, that we have to add that into our schedules or unscheduled time, or else we were like not going to finish grad school. Like,
yeah. Oh, it's tough. It's definitely a tough journey, similar to how tough entrepreneurship can be, and, feeling beat up on some days. And you talked about, what inspired you to start Educated Chola, or what's the inspiration behind, but can you speak a little bit more about like the concept of, right? So in all the things that you could have done in terms of a business, what was it about this specific industry, and or specifically having like tangible products to sell that, that you found compelling, or that matched kind of where you wanted to go? So a little bit more around the concept ideation of the whole business.
Yeah. So I will start by saying that I think people that have mental health issues are probably the funniest people I've met. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm so funny, blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted to take that idea of, not that people with mental health issues are funny, but just the fact that I have a mental health issue and no one's talking about the overall picture of mental health in the Latinx community, but also make it approachable. So, so I have mugs, for example. So those are mostly either like things I've thought about. I mean, now it's in t-shirts, etc. But they're ideas that you can bring into the home and still be able to explain to your family, like, oh, what's the purpose of that? So for example, I mentioned the amygdala cállate one. Another good one would be either respira profundo, which is what my mom would always tell me. I stopped calling her sometimes because I was like, I'm crying, she's gonna tell me not to cry, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just like, I'm not gonna call her. And honestly, like through grad school, like she would call me and she's like, oh, how was your day? Like, I wouldn't tell her because I was like, no, I'm gonna start bawling, and then two, like, just let me do my thing. But every single time, without fail, she would tell me respira profundo. I was like, okay. And now, like, I'm sure you've heard too about, breathing and it being so important. Like, we stop breathing. Literally, we take shallow breaths whenever we're like anxious or depressed, and like we literally just need oxygen. So in bringing that simple like phrase to your home, then like at least your parents can be like, oh, okay, like, they might not understand the whole thing, but at least they can say like, oh yeah, respira profundo. As well as like chingate imposter syndrome. That one's kind of hard, but I've had people, come up to me like, oh yeah, I've definitely had that, and then like the next moment they're like crying because they're like, no, like, I still have it. So even that, like being able to explain imposter syndrome to your parents, like it's still hard. Like I still don't have the correct words to explain it to anyone really in Spanish. Mind you, like I speak Spanish, but like, a lot of things don't translate into Spanish. So that's why I have like, hoy no quiero adult. So like not today kind of vibes. But they understand that. So as long as, we can get this idea across to them that all of these things that we don't do, don't want to do, or are like always tired, like that's, me all the time. Oh my God, I have to go there. Okay. Yeah, so being able to bring those things like that to homes and being explainable to the older generations who have all of these stigmas. So that's why I have kind of like the pills as earrings. And they won't necessarily know that they're pills, but like you yourself can be like a little infiltrator in your home by like wearing them. And if you feel like comfortable enough to tell them like, oh yeah, like, if they comment, oh, they're cute or something, you can carry that conversation, and you can also choose not to. I'm definitely, pro medication. I didn't start taking medication until I was like probably 29. That was like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm 32, 3 years. And it was always because I was like so scared of it. I was like, what if I'm addicted? What about this? And it was definitely the stigma of being labeled like crazy, etc. Like not just like crazy, like jokingly, but like, oh, they're gonna think awful things about me. And knowing that they themselves are never going to, or not never, but it's highly unlikely that they themselves are either going to go to therapy or that they will acknowledge that there's this bigger issue of mental health in their own homes. Because, if you admit it in the little pueblo or whatever, in the rancho, then the whole town's going to know, like, what are they going to say? And I'm definitely like I don't say I'm like black sheep of my sisters and I, but I'm definitely the most vocal one. And sometimes my mom tells me to shut up. So I try to monitor myself. But I, made those with the purpose of at least allowing people to embrace that they can take medication and it's okay if that's not something that their home accepts, but also, to create awareness of like, yeah, I'm taking a medication and this is the one I'm taking. So they're all different colors except Lexapro, which is just like the solid gold-plated one. There's like the pink one that's lithium, green, I believe, is Prozac, and the blue is Cymbalta. I'm working on making the one for Xanax, so that should be fun. People will be like, Xanax or Zoloft? I was like, not yet, we're working on it. So just bringing that about in what you wear. So I think the main difference between my brand and all these other Latina brands, lifestyle brands, that I'm like, power to you, but I highly doubt you'll ever see me, make something that says like chingona, which is like, it's awesome, but like, I'm not gonna do that because I'm just trying to embrace my Latinidad, but through the mental health aspect. So that's why like a lot of my things, I don't think I've ever put anything that says like chingona or all of those, they're all positive things, but like I'm doing it in a little bit of a different way of like, I'm still proud that I'm a Latina, Latinx, whatever you want to call it. I don't know about that one. But also embracing my mental health and like not hiding it. And that's what I think we're all doing, like hiding it. And that's okay too. But just to make it okay to feel like, yeah, I take meds, it's fine. Like, it's not an issue. Because I've definitely had people tell me, oh, I can't take that. Or like, I don't want to do that because my family's going to say something. I'm just like, you don't have to tell them. Like, so being also willing to like do things just for yourself, that's aside from your family or your direct circle that you feel like you would be the most judged by if you did something.
Yeah. And I think that it's like it's really neat to see your really like again your bigger purpose, right, which is about mental health awareness and normalizing a lot of these experiences or feelings that we're having. um, and your outlet is the products that you do. And so I think that really it speaks to you as a creative. Really, I see it as like you're an artist, you're a creative, because
Minor
not,
in
I
studio
couldn't just
art.
say that again.
I have a minor in studio art. So
Oh, well, but
I
I
just wanted
know
to
that
be
part of
clear.
that comes
Yeah.
from right here. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think that there's a reason why you exist. And not just you, I mean, your business too. There's a reason
Yeah.
why you are here, and your outlet for this mission, mental health is like your the purpose of, and you're doing this through things that people can put on, literally they can put on and identify with. And a
Yeah.
lot of what we wear, whether it's jewelry or shirts or clothes,
Mhm.
is to kind of like support and uplift ourselves to feel proud of whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever we're wearing. Like I have Aztec calendar earrings, and this little like Frida, and it's like you feel the pride. And I think with your product, the same thing. Like people, you're giving that to people. I remember walking into, and we'll transition to a little bit, I just want to really just highlight that you have a collaborative spirit. You are in like, you have that community about you, because I've walked into like Cafe Girasol and see your product there, and I know you've done other events and other similar kind of ventures, and seeing that, and I walk in, right, and it's like I see that, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I can identify with that, I can identify with that. And honestly, it could flip the switch from how I'm feeling to like, okay, I'm not alone, or oh, okay, this is okay, or I think the cup that I got last time was like, it's okay.
Oh, I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and okay, like the not the right okay way,
Yeah.
right, to write it. And so like all of that, it's you're really manifesting kind of what you stand for and your purpose through your brand and through your product. So that was a long-winded way to say that. And I think for those that are listening, I encourage you all to follow Rosa, to take a look at some of her products, and I know it will resonate with a lot of folks out there. So can you speak a little bit to I know it wasn't kind of in our scripted questions, but speak a little bit to like how you view like these collaborative opportunities, because I see that a lot with our community actually, and I saw it a lot during the pandemic, and I think it's something that it's just kind of a part of who we are, where you're like, okay, this isn't working, let me pivot, let me connect with people, let me I've seen like people have one physical space, and you have like multiple businesses there, and everybody's trying to support each other. So I just think it's a great message to send, and also that people that maybe trying to figure out where to go, how to start, where do they get support. So I'm curious if you could speak to a little bit about that collaborative spirit in you, and like how did you start doing that? Like who was it, talking to people, like what was your kind of your path for that?
I think it, and I always like say this when someone asks me something about like, oh, I'm too shy to do like, go ask people things. And like, I learned in grad school, I mean, even before that, like, and they're like, you should ask for things. And not even necessarily for things, but someone did mention to me like, oh, like you shouldn't just go to networking events to get something out of people.
Mm-hmm.
So once I heard that, I was like, that's so true. Like, I probably went to events in like NYU because they had them. And I was like, I guess I have to go, like I have to show face, and I have to do something if I want to have a job, etc. So all of these events felt like, oh, I'm only talking to them because I need a job afterwards. And I knew that wasn't going to happen because I was going to come back to California. But it all kind of started with that, in that like now whenever I go to any event, if I'm going to like say ask about if I can host an event at their location, I will just straight up go to like the bar and ask whoever it is there. I'm like, hey, we want to do this, blah blah blah. Like it doesn't faze me anymore. Like, I'm just gonna ask. And the worst thing that someone can say is no.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of the attitude I go into most things I do. I'm just like, well, they could tell me no, but if I don't ask, then I don't know. And then there goes my opportunity, or someone else will take it. And I usually say, if you don't do it, then maybe a white man's gonna do it. So
Mhm.
I'd rather be me than the white man. But with that, prefacing everything, in terms of community, yeah, it's the same thing of like, I just ask people, like the friends I had in New York were people that I felt comfortable with, and I didn't know them before that, but I know I could go to them and ask them if I needed support. It wasn't like we were all struggling. And again, everyone was struggling with their mental health. Like, grad school's not fun. So I will put that out there. I'm not saying don't do it, but like, it's hard. It's a whole like different mental game than what your undergraduate is. It's just different. And it also, crosses, I guess, cultural boundaries, because it wasn't just me. Like, I had some other friends my white friends, and they were also struggling, and I was just like, oh my God, like, we're all dying. Like, literally everyone's either like drinking or having a mental health problem or something.
Yeah.
And like, I know I was like depressed my last semester. I was like, this needs to be over. Like,
Yeah.
I was just done. But anyways, in terms of community, when it came to starting a business, I just reached out to like one business owner that I personally like followed and like had met. Like, I loved her stuff. And I mentioned earlier that I asked like some bigger businesses like questions like, hey, where do you make this, blah blah blah. I like got no response, which is like, okay, I get that. But also, I don't think there was never, I'm pretty confident there was never like a message relayed from me to whoever the owner was that like I looked up to or whatever, that I feel like a lot of businesses could at least do. Like, if you're gonna not respond, then like, that's fine. And I've had various events, like I've applied to events, no response. I'm just like, just tell me no, like, don't let me like hang here, like, this is a waste of my time, whatever. So I try to respond to people as much as I can. And if not, my disclaimer is that like, I might be crying. So we'll come back to it at some point. Like, I won't forget things. It's just, I'm probably overwhelmed with something. But I do, strive to always reply to someone, even if it's not me, the one that ends up helping them. Like, I can find the other resources for you, or find someone that might know the answer. But yeah, it's more so about just asking. And, if someone is collaborative, they'll respond.
Mhm.
And not having to focus on, oh, well, they're so small, or like, they're really big. And I'm like, okay, well, I know they're not going to reply if they're bigger, but you never know. But yeah, I've had a lot of help from other businesses like Yais Naturals. Like, I asked her, I'm like, hey, like, well, how does the shipping stuff work and whatever? And they're like, oh yeah, I got this like scale from Amazon or something. I was like, okay, cool. So there was that one thing. And then I don't know where I was looking. I'm like, oh, this is where they make all of their stuff. Apparently the callejones are very popular for a lot of brands that have some jewelry products for the most part. But yeah, it's all about really just finding like-minded businesses or friends that are willing to just share with you, and also willing to give you feedback, even if you didn't ask for it. Like, I welcome feedback. Like, I love it. If something is like weird or something, there has to be a reason for why I did something. So like, for example, my website right now is not what it used to look like. And it was like that because I just didn't have time. Like I have a full-time job, or at that time had that one full-time job. Now I have another one. But like I literally didn't have time. Like that was draining me through the day. And then they're like, oh, okay, like, well, I can help you do this to the side by doing this. I'm like, okay, great, do it. Like I have no problem delegating. But it was just because I didn't have the time. It wasn't like I hadn't thought about it. Like I'm like, I want my page to be as user friendly as possible and like be made with all of these marketing techniques I know exist out there, but I don't got the time. Or it'll take me like hours to do that particular like task because it takes so long in general. So just finding people that are willing to like let you know, like, hey, it's an easier way to do it this way, or this is what I use. Just the openness about that is, I guess, my collaborative side. And again, like, we're not going to get anywhere if we're just competing with each other. So that's my other like reason why I find collaboration so useful. And as long as you know where you're going or like what your idea is, then I wouldn't worry about your business. Like keep doing what you're doing and just ask. Someone might answer.
Yeah. And I think you hit it. Like, it's so key. You're going to reach out to 10 people. If 5 people respond, those are the 5 people that you want to be talking to. You don't want to be talking to the people that are going to be unresponsive and unsupportive. Right. And so I think that's part of the game. I'll say part of the journey as you're kind of building your business or growing your business. So, can you speak to like, and I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what kind of challenges or struggles did you encounter as you were building out your business, or maybe you're still, kind of going through right now, in your business? Anything that you can share with folks, and then also like how you kind of processed that or overcame that or are going through that kind of, managing that.
Yeah. Overall struggles. I think finding, so like the jewelry portion of my business, that definitely was something that started just by the hoop earrings. Because I was like, oh my God, this takes so much money. I know it's wholesale, but it's still a lot of money if like you don't have any like extra income to be doing this. Like, I mean, I had savings, but even that wasn't a lot. Being able, or like not being able, maybe like taking the risk of like, all right, I'm gonna make these, it's gonna work. And then it came out and I was like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. Like being able to do that and just, in a way, trusting yourself of like, this is the product and it's gonna work, is probably just how I got through it. Now I'm lucky that I was able to qualify for like a business credit card, an account, and it's not like, I'm not like raking in all the money, or anything like that. I'm like, I'm still paying that, or like, it still has to pay itself back. Basically, because everything that I'm making is like investing. And then once you sell the products, then it's like, well, you need X amount in order for you to get your profit back. Like it doesn't all come at once. And I think that's one part that I'm just like, okay, well, this is fine. Like I get motivated when I go to events. I'm just like, oh my God, like I actually sold something. Like I still get surprised that like people will buy things from me. And I'm just like, what is this? So just getting used to like the idea that I have to keep going. Like, I think you mentioned something earlier that made me think about this too. I'm just like, I don't feel like I have the choice to stop now. Like I feel responsible for being that Latinx mental health voice now, because I still see it in like other brands where they'll have like one thing like self-care something, or like, you know, it's like one piece or one product, and like that's not enough. Like we can't just be like, you know, oh, we're gonna do the one, and people shit on bubble baths all the time. Like they're great. So anyone who's like, oh, this doesn't solve it, I'm like, no shit, it's not gonna solve your problems, but
Right.
like it helps.
Yeah.
I love bubble baths or bath bombs. It's part of my thing. Like is like it was really hot recently, so I did that because I, for whatever reason, get depressed sometimes when it's just too hot. Not necessarily like the sun. Like I love the vitamin D. I take vitamin D supplements for it. Like I'm doing everything plus my medication. So like it's definitely something that it has to be part of a routine if you're like, I'm trying to help my mental health, versus being like, I don't want to say like a band-aid, but like being like a one-time thing, kind of like Hispanic or Latino Heritage Month, like, oh, it's a month thing. Like, no, this happens all years. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so it's, you know, doing those things, and also back to like the business struggles. I guess one of the other things that is hard, and like, you know, sometimes, and I don't want to use the word depressing, like I've definitely had like a moment where I applied to like 10 or I don't know how many grants, and I was just like, one of these has to give one day. I mean, it hasn't yet, but one of these has to give. And like was just like so exhausted, like, oh, I keep getting rejected, like, all right, let me go do my tantrum thing and then we'll be fine. And like, yeah, we're fine. That doesn't mean I'm gonna go and like just apply automatic to another 10, but now I have the boilerplate to do that and just submit them. And I personally don't, you know, and I do this just in my regular life, like I don't count my money before I have it.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm able to function. That's like, I think a big part of why I'm still able to do my business, because I'm not necessarily doing it to have all this money like right now.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I want to run it and, you know, make it my main source of income someday, but that's not today. That's probably going to be in a few years, hopefully. And it helps me to just continue what I'm doing. Like I enjoy going to events and talking to people. I enjoy when people DM me. People can DM me. A lot of people do, and they'll just ask me questions that they don't want to ask like in the comments, or ask me if, you know, I've experienced with therapy or whatever. Like I do, but you know, if they just want to talk about it more. And like I've definitely had conversations with people, and then I meet them in person and I'm like, oh my God, it's you.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely open to that. But yeah, that's what keeps me or lets me keep going. The fact that I am not relying on any external source of income to run my business. It's all either been like personal savings, or, and now it's my business account that helps me and lets me, like, I'm gonna purchase an order of these earrings coming up soon. But I wouldn't be able to comfortably do that without my business credit card. And that's how I was doing it for the first year for sure. And then it started late 2020. So now it's kind of been like 2 years since I started. And this year's when I got the credit card. So like up until now, I'm just like, I need money so I can invest in here. And I need this other side hustle to do this for this other one. So it's a lot of that. And like, it's really given me a lot of relief to be able to have that account and, you know, still manage it wisely. And not have to think about like, oh, okay, it's my direct personal money. It still is, but it's not like I'm taking it from my personal account and then using that. Now I can have something else that helps me keep making things.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, all of these things that you're sharing, and even with the business cards, make me think of just how many how many things that business owners have to think about, right? Like there's so many moving
I have
parts
to
to
make
your business.
TikToks and I haven't done those in like
The
weeks.
social media and the money management and then like your products and making those and going to pop-ups, and I mean there's just so much. And
My
I
pop
know there's a lot. Yeah, go ahead. What did
That's
you
an
say?
add-on.
Oh.
It's like a little divider, but that's where I put shirts at the most recent event. So it'll be a Latina fest.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think as as we're kind of winding down and closing the interview, wanted to hear from you on, what kind of advice or suggestions or words of wisdom would you leave our audience with that are listening, but particularly those women, Latina women that are listening that are kind of on the verge of starting their business or just started their business. Like what would you recommend to them, or kind of just some advice that you have for them?
Hmm. I would, I mean, feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions. I'm happy to share. Um, if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find it for you. If there's any like manufacturer stuff, like I'll share who my mug person is. Like, here, give her the business. Um, Definitely just, if you're gonna ask something, just ask it with confidence.
Mm.
Like they don't know what you're doing behind your DM message. Literally just like write the sentence in there, and don't, I would just say don't over explain, because then that like allows for holes to be poked at and people to see like, oh, like she's just starting, blah 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 blah, and it's like you didn't even say that you were just starting. So just try and ask with confidence. It's okay if someone says no, like nothing's gonna happen. And take it from someone who has anxiety all the time and overthinks. Like I've learned when I can manage it, I've learned like, okay, well that happened, like what happens next? So like, poke holes in your own narrative of, well, they told me no, now I can't do this. It's like, no, like they told you no, but go and find out another way.
Yeah.
So don't be scared about asking, ask confidently. And if you're told no, then they're not for you.
Mm. I love that. I just walk the walk. You have it in you. You have that. Just portray that confidence. I think that's
It's
beautiful.
a
As
lot
long
of
as
faking it.
there's a what?
It's a lot of faking it. Like there was a, I don't know if it's called a meme. I don't know if it's a meme for sure. I don't think it's a meme, but it was this like message, and I reposted it, and it's like, oh, I've been hiding it well, that blah 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 is happening, and it's because something about like my anxiety. But then at the end it's like, oh, like, but that's just the one thing that's stressing me out. So it was it's like, yeah, that's how I feel. Like I have done such a good job at convincing people that nothing was wrong with me, but like that is what is stressing me out. And it's not always like that, but it's definitely something that I think I'm gonna say like all women entrepreneurs probably have that experience with, of like, I have my shit together, but I don't. And like no one has their shit together. They're all probably lost too. Like I'm still lost. And I'm just like, sure, let's go with that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. I think that's such good sound advice, and coming from, like you said, experience, what you've experienced. So I know that that's going to help women out there. If you're thinking about starting your business or just starting, you're not alone. Reach out to Rosa, reach out to us as well. And there's a community that is here to support you and champion you in all your work. So Rosa, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and sitting down with us and sharing your story and just being vulnerable and just really speaking to your purpose. I really admire that about you, and I think that you're got such a beautiful spirit, and I know we're going to continue to stay in touch. You're part of our community, and so we want to keep supporting you too. So thank you so much for this time, and we'll thank you everybody for listening and for being here with us. And hasta la próxima. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.